that are not joining us from ASEAN, but maybe from Europe or other parts of the world. We're very excited that you have once again decided to follow us for the European Research and Innovation Days ASEAN. This is the Euraxis ASEAN flagship event. It's a platform designed by us for you. We're hoping that this will give lots of opportunity for us to exchange ideas and come together to develop new partnerships, how we can jointly make the world a better place. Now, Euraxis ASEAN is, of course, an initiative that tries to bring together researchers from all over the world. We want you to collaborate with researchers in Europe as well. We're looking at the hot topics of the day. In 2022, we're focusing on the twin transition of green and digital in ASEAN and the EU. So we have for you a program over 14 days where we develop panel discussions, workshops, best practice sessions where you can learn about the research that is happening in Europe and in ASEAN, and where hopefully you can discover new partners for you to work together in the future. Now, today's session is particularly exciting. Jenny and I, my name, sorry, is Susanne Renzovar, so I'm part of the Euraxis ASEAN team, and my colleague Jenny will speak to you in just a few seconds. We're super excited about today's session, titled The Future of Sustainable and Digital Fashion. And we have a fabulous panel waiting to speak to you. And I think to introduce our moderator for today, I'm handing over to my wonderful colleague, Dr. Jenny Almagro. Jenny, please.
Thank you so much, Susanne. And good morning to everyone joining us. And if you are in different parts of the world, still a good morning to you too. And we are having a really exciting panel today. It's also a powerful all-women panel. So very excited. And I'm very excited as well to introduce to you a very good friend of mine who will be moderating the session. So our moderator is the founder of Lily of the Valley. It's innerwear. It's designed to support you through life stages like puberty, pregnancy, motherhood, all of these transitions as a woman that we really need support, even on the clothing department. She's a champion in the Pacific Menstrual Health Initiative, supporting trade finance for micro entrepreneurs in the Pacific. And she's a member of the Asia Pacific Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Trade Coalition. Our moderator holds diplomas from the Asia Pacific College School of Computing and Information Technology in the Philippines and the Swedish Institute Management Program on Sustainability and Responsible Business in Sweden. I've had the pleasure of being her friend for quite some time. We met each other first as colleagues, as board members of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women. And the friendship is getting stronger. I'm very happy that she is here with us spending time. So our moderator, ladies and gentlemen, and all of the genders represented in this room, Camille Escudero, founder of Lily of the Valley. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you so much for that fantastic introduction, Jenny. I am as ecstatic as you are in getting this panel discussion started. However, before we do that, allow me to introduce our expert panel. First up, I'm sure that a lot of you have seen the very, very impressive bio. So I'll just pick little bits and so we can get this started. So first up, she is a pioneering force in the women empowerment, lifestyle, and fashion media industry. She heads the GCM Group in Indonesia, a prominent lifestyle media company with a host of brands and products oriented to empowering women and the creative industry. She's actively involved in Jakarta Fashion Week, food festivals, women in business, and the youth. A fellow mathematics and scuba diving enthusiast, let us all welcome Svida Alijabana.
Hi, great to be here.
Fantastic. Our next speaker is also called Princess Ant and co-founder and managing director of Anthill Fabric Gallery, a social and cultural enterprise working on elevating Filipino weaving culture through design and capacity building. by providing market access and transferring business skills to its artisan partners so that they can become successful and self-reliant enterprises. She's my friend, a passionate woman, an entrepreneur, pushing forward economic empowerment, particularly for the weaving community, entrepreneurship, and handcraft traditions. Let's give a hand to Anya Lim.
Thank you so much, Camille. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Now, rounding up our panel is the founder of Zerin. She believes that solutions to many of the world's most pressing social and environmental issues can be found in better design, from making higher quality products that can be circulated for longer to rethinking existing business models and supply chain processes. A model that I myself align with. She's a former fashion editor turned entrepreneur and today works at the intersection of consumers, brands, and sustainability advocacy. She was recently hailed as one of LinkedIn's top green voices in Singapore. Let's give a round of applause to Susanna Jaffer.
Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
Now, to our audience watching live, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat in Zoom, as well as in streaming live at the Facebook page of Euraxis ASEAN. So the page is euraxis.links.asean, and you can catch us there as well. Our conference managers will sift through them, feed them to us, and we will strive to respond to them in real time. Now, before we get to the meat of this panel, I'd like to start with a lightning round to get us comfortable and allow us to peer into the personalities of our expert panel. So let's get it on. Now, anyone can get this going. If you were an article of clothing or accessory, what would you be and why? How about we start off with Susanna?
Start.
Oh, was that Frida?
It would be an irresistible piece, handmade piece, most likely choker.
Ooh, nice. And why?
I just, that is something that is easy to keep, easy to collect. From time to time, it's nice to see it and touch it and feel it.
Super. Thank you for sharing that, Frida. All right, who's up next?
Speeda, that's basically what you're wearing now.
Yeah, I have plenty of those.
For me, off the top of my head, I think I would be a blazer, in something that I feel that you can throw on over anything. I love kind of blazers, kimono-esque jackets, because they can kind of instantly change or dress up an outfit. I love layering. You can't do a lot of it when you're in Singapore, but I still wear a lot of kind of lightweight jackets because they can just change up anything that you have underneath instantly. And I like that they can be a bit transformative in terms of your mood, or just adding interest to an outfit. So yeah, a cool blazer. I would gravitate between plain and kind of funky prints. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Susanna. Kind of like your personality.
Maybe, I don't know.
It's so cool.
Right,
I was just
Anya,
thinking,
you're up.
yeah, I was just thinking coverwear, but so similar to Susanna, I do love the flexibility of coverwears and how functional they are. But a very specific one would be this binakol pattern from the Philippines. It's hand woven by an indigenous partner community in Abra, and it has optical illusion effect that says to drive away bad spirits, which makes the fabric more meaningful. And it reflects my personality because I always want to carry positive vibes and drive away the bad jujus. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Anya. I do feel cozy when I'm around you. So, okay, to get us again on the first question, first of the first question. Let's first define what is sustainable fashion. So what is sustainable fashion for you, and how have you been practicing it in your work and or your daily life? Let's start with you, Anya.
Okay, thanks, Camille. I think I'll break down the terms even more. I want to look at sustainability holistically for us to be able to understand how that relates to fashion. So, in essence, for me, sustainability is being able to use the resources today in a way where it benefits our future generation. And the way that applies to fashion could mean different things, right? But again, looking at things holistically would mean how is your business value chain practicing sustainability in terms of economic? How is it supporting culturally? How is it supporting also environmentally? Looking at it at a holistic manner. Particularly in our work in Anthill, we zone in on the socio-economic impact or the how we can apply sustainable practices in a way that benefits or creates positive socio-economic impact, as well as environmental impact. So there's so many things, there's so many factors and elements to sustainability. And one brand or one organization or business can't address that all. But in Anthill, we focus on being able to preserve and elevate culture, which means we will not ever eliminate the human element in the process of making clothes. And that's why we honor the value of the living traditions of handloom weaving. Second, we ensure the women are supported economically and they're able to access markets and also have fair income when they produce the craft that is very much unique to them. And we continue to provide platforms, enabling environments where they're able to really value their talent and their skill. And then finally, because these fabrics go through such a rigorous process in producing, and we also acknowledge the fact that fashion is contributing to environmental pollution. Anthill has also established circularity programs where we upcycle our scrap fabrics, or we're able to also weave zero waste fabrics in order for us to be able to extend the life cycle of the product or the raw material. So in essence, we look at aspects of sustainability that are focused on culture, economic empowerment, and circularity.
Thank you for that. Something about you'll always keep the human aspect of the business. And we're going to go back to that later when we get to the digital fashion portion. All right, Susanna, how about you?
I mean, I echo many of the sentiments that Anya shared. I would also like to add that the word sustainability and sustainable fashion has become a little bit nebulous and can mean many different things to different people. At the same time, that means it can be quite confusing, whether you're a brand trying to implement sustainable practices or whether you're a kind of everyday consumer just trying to choose better. To me, my journey kind of culminated in a realization that sustainable fashion really just means, at its heart, is a movement and a shift in thinking, in how we, on a consumer level, a shift in thinking about our relationship with stuff and how and why we consume, and kind of getting a little bit more thoughtful about that. With that comes, the plethora of different options that there are to different ways in which you can engage with sustainable fashion, namely, choosing to support a smaller sustainable business, which is what we do at Zeren. We're an e-commerce marketplace and media platform. So we have a lot of vetted independent designers from around Southeast Asia and Europe, which we carry and have on our omnichannel marketplace. And we share a lot of media content promoting responsible consumption and production, and breaking that down. There's so many ways you can engage with sustainable fashion, just supporting independent, swapping, thrifting, renting, buying less, buying nothing at all. There is many different ways that anyone can kind of engage. And for brands, I think that it really looks like, again, echoing some of Anya's sharing and, what she's obviously demonstrating through her business is, going back to the root of why you do what you do and analyzing your supply chain processes and looking at how they impact people, planet, and I would even say animals as well, if we're talking about ethics within the supply chain. It's a very nuanced topic, and excited to try and get into that a bit today as well.
That's awesome, Susanna. And you've answered one of our questions already for later. But now, Zvida, let's hear from you.
Sustainability fashion for me is a journey, and everyone will have his or her own unique way in paving the way of the sustainability journey. For myself, it's about treasured the pieces coming from my mother, the treasured the pieces that I have and I'm collecting along the way. Also understanding the pieces that I purchased and cherish it. On my professional part, that is, I'm working with a lot of designers. I can see that many of them are working differently. I mean, one is through the circularity fashion, one is through heritage or tradition, how to keep the craftsmanship to the next generation. There are many other ways of keeping this fashion sustainably. And of course, being in the media, I'm supporting them all and cherishing too. And the last one is that just like recently, I started in some initiative with some friends, actually in a rather ambitious and a very long-term way, that we set up a community of threads for hope. So we are doing a lot of studying and research and development in organic coloring. The purpose is of course, to maintain the heritage we have, but also to understand how to cultivate it so that it will make more sense for more people. It's not just a matter of, oh, I can pick the color in the bag, but it's something that we can make this organic coloring make sense even for the industry level. And secondly is upcycle, whether that is using avals from the government companies, and also now working with some farms. I have friends who is in the pineapple, so we are in the talk of doing some which have been done in some part of the world, with pineapple and viscose, developing new fabric and things. So yeah, there are things that is moving at the moment, and it's a journey. I cannot see the end first, but it's a journey.
Fantastic, Zvida. And I love what you said about being intentional in the things that you purchase, because I think that drives also from what Susanna and Anya said about reaching into your why you're doing things. And even, purchasing must have a powerful why. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So earlier, Susanna mentioned that, sustainable fashion can mean so many things to different people and in different industries, probably. So it is becoming practice for brands and businesses to measure and communicate their impact. However, there are issues like greenwashing, and I want us to talk about this a little bit. So I'd like to go to either Zvida or Susanna. Can we define what it is, and can you share specific examples of it? And how do we spot brands that greenwash?
Well, these days, sustainability fashion is a sexy word for anyone, for everyone to put this on the label. But it's a question that, are they doing it sincerely with full intention to change the world? Or this is a matter of the commercial gimmicks? I'm seeing greenwashing through a sense, I'm seeing semi-greenwash. I'm seeing also uh, greenwash by accident. So anyway, one of an example is that I'm not so happy with some of the I would not name, with some of the research institutes coming from the fast fashion in Indonesia. They are doing research on Aval and things like that. But the organization that they approach is not, in my opinion, is an organization that is not really doing a scale up. This is an organization that is very good in making up stories. But when I ask them, like, okay, what is your capacity? I'm so excited with your project, with your process. What is your capacity? Can I help you putting things more together? Like, so if they're using avals, then maybe I can connect to the garment, to one of the largest garment company, and then they can supply you infinite avals so that you can make a lot of garments. Oh, and then they say, oh, we can have so many, we can do so many tons. Like, tell me how many tons. Lo and behold, it's just a very few machineries. That is, in a way, is greenwash. And interestingly, some of the big European fast fashion companies are working with these companies, and because they have nice stories. So I would say that is categorically is greenwashing, because it's not really making an impact. It's making stories. Secondly, it is a question by itself about this fashion sustainability. Okay, if European loves the story, if European loves making products with fashion, with sustainability part of it, it will come more expensive, because working with the village, I mean, we have some expert. This is not working with machines. A lot of rejections. What to do with the rejections? How do we pricing it? All this come with prices. And in the name of stories, the retailers would accept it in the beginning. But of course, with time, then it needs the price to go lower and lower and lower. Then we cannot help either. This is, so in the end, then we need to stop it, or probably it's a fad. The story ends there. That somewhat is greenwashing. Third, this is a sad story. A few years back, there was like an Indonesian designer going to village, reviving weaving in this village, working with them. She's even got display in Paris, and very good press. 6 months later, I got the report that the workers have not been paid. That is another greenwashing. So in summary, it's like, okay, with this fashion sustainability, it comes big responsibility. It comes with an impact, with an idea to create an impact, and that has to be a promise and well intended from our own heart.
Thank you so much, Vida. You shared very excellent examples of those business practices that are not
It's
good. So I'm
greenwashing.
gonna go now. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Susanna, as consumers, how can we be more discerning and in choosing socially responsible brands? And I know you have, you did a lot of brands with Zarin. Can you share with us your experience?
Yeah, echoing, a lot of things that Speed has shared. I totally agree. Greenwashing has become even more sophisticated, and it's quite hard to discern as a consumer or even as a brand, what are the right moves, what should you be choosing? And it can actually feel a little bit off-putting, when you hear, now there's a lot of noise on social media. I personally follow a lot of, influencers, activists, etc., who kind of decry every single fast fashion kind of conscious collection as greenwashing, which, to be perfectly honest, I think it is. Any sustainability campaign that ignores the reality of their supply chain is kind of greenwashing. End off. I think that's a great summary. I think it really comes down to doing your research. And that can feel a little bit daunting when you're just kind of used to just, anyhow shopping online and just like adding to cart or walking into a store. Everything is so readily available. But I think it can become more natural to look a little bit deeper into the practices of brands and what they say, and more importantly, what they don't say when they claim something is more sustainable or socially conscious. For the brands that we work with, as an example, you will see the kind of what we call transparency and traceability of that they share in terms of their supply chain and how they produce. I love that we work with is called Dorsu. They're based in Cambodia, and they are sort of in a country which contextually is a historical hub for fast fashion production, loose labor laws, a lot of exploitation. They've created a business. They're a vertically integrated brand, which means they're a producer and they produce all of their own products. So their entire supply chain is managed by them. They upcycle dead stock waste from the local markets to create into these beautiful basics, which I think in terms of the sustainable fashion conversation are very affordable, more expensive than fast fashion, but definitely more affordable in sort of a wider context. They publicize things like the fact that they pay living wages actually 30% above the Cambodian living wage, because there are two things: minimum wages, which are set by governments and are often in producing countries very low to encourage brands to want to produce there. And then there's living wages, which is actual more gathered by data as to how much it actually costs to live in such a country. So they publicize things like this. They publicize, where the fabrics come from. They publicize, the impact that they're making, as well as the quality of their garments. And they're quite forthcoming with that. So I think if you have any questions or wondering about, you want to support a brand or purchase from a business, and you're actually wondering, a question like, where does this actually come from, or who is actually making this, or where are you acquiring this, just ask them. Everyone's on social media now. Brands cannot ignore DMs because they're worried about being cancelled. So I think just reaching out, as a potential customer, you have every right to know how you're spending your money, whether that's $40, whether that's $400, it doesn't matter the quantity. And I think in that way, consumers, the more that we encourage or ask questions of brands, the more they are incentivized to change, or to change authentically. We're seeing a lot of fast fashion brands now shift to circular business models because they realize that they cannot rely on the sale of cheap first-hand created goods. You see this with many of the world's biggest brands. It's also soon becoming illegal to greenwash. You can look up the current investigation by Content Markets Authority in the UK. Retailers like ASOS, I'm going to name names, recently took down like all of their eco filters off their website, which is wild, because they did a huge campaign about it in 2019 because they realized it's all BS, to be perfectly honest. And there's a lot of this which you can kind of Google and read about, but I think there's legislation which is happening to make this easier. At the same time, you can kind of ask brands questions. The ones that are the most transparent are the ones that are the most forthcoming with information and can make it easier for you.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And you're absolutely right. I also appreciate, when people ask questions about the products that we make, and because it gives you an opportunity to, share your mission, and just explain why things are. Even someone who asked, when will you have zero plastic? Thinking of you can have zero plastic, but actually in reality at this time we can't. So thank you for that, Susanna. I'm gonna go now to you, Anya. You advocate for transparency through Anthill. As a brand, what metrics do you look at to measure your impact, and how are you communicating this to your community? And maybe also share a little bit, what has the response been from your consumers or the community, the weaving community?
Yeah, thank you. It's just been a very interesting conversation, and I totally agree with Svita and Susanna that I think there's such a valuable role from the consumers to make brands really accountable for what they put out and what they communicate. And with wearing, but to look beyond what is on social media, what are all these curated posts, is the bigger challenge. With us in Anthill, we've always been very big on transparency. I think because you have also always wanted to be held accountable and to be grounded in our values and in our mission. And it's always been a mutual relationship, given that we're in an ecosystem business model. The way for us to continuously be on the edge of our work and do things better is when our customers, our community of followers always question us, always ask us questions, always kind of really dig deep into understanding the how we do things, why we do things, and the intricacies of our supply chain. So in terms of our impact metrics, earlier I mentioned that we focus our sustainability work on cultural preservation, economic empowerment, and circularity. And we focus our work on these things because this is where we're good at. We're not going to try and pretend to be good at something else. So we look at the cultural continuity, which Svita mentioned. How much younger members or younger women do we have in our community enterprises? The ratio between the elder members and the young, to ensure that we're actually able to pass on the tradition of weaving and make it relevant for the younger generation. We also look at the level of income that is increased from the way we procure from our partner communities and the way we're able to support their production capacity. So we look at the income of the weavers, but we also look at their production capacity. We look at the increase in their production capacity, the number of weaves woven a certain time range a year, to see if we're able to support the independence and self-reliance of their business. And this is made possible because we run a community enterprise development program, which transfers business skills to these community enterprises. We also now look at the income from weaving zero waste fabrics or from our circularity program, from upcycling. Again, just to put emphasis on how our economic activities are being sustained and how our circularity innovations are also contributing to providing economic opportunities, or how much waste fabrics, may this be textile waste, production end cuts, dead stock fabrics, are we able to upcycle? So this one we measure in kilos. And it took us a process also for us to have very clear impact indicators and impact metrics. We had to also make sure quarterly or power and provenance and the qualitative story supporting this data. So we go down on the field. We have community managers in our respective partner communities, and on an annual basis, we conduct interviews and surveys, do a proper monitoring and evaluation, and see how our programs are actually benefiting the artisans and improving their way of life. When we communicate this to our consumers, they actually feel very invested. They feel part of the solution. And there's not so much questions on why are your weaves expensive, or why are the prices expensive? Because they understand the value we create in the supply chain, and then they also appreciate the value that it creates for them. Not just looking at the cost of value, but really looking at the integral value of what it means to buy this piece of clothing from Anthill or from this brand. We've also been asked a couple of times, like, what's the breakdown of your price? How much really goes to the artisan? How much goes to your program? So when we do our trunk shows, and we're famous for this, we have a pricing structure where we have a diagram and we illustrate how much percent goes to our overhead costs, how much percent goes to our margins, how much percent goes to the artisan and the programs. And this gives consumers a deeper appreciation, not just of what they buy, but also of the power of their purchase. And the positive impact it has given us is really being able to grow a very genuine community of customers, like the likes of Jenny and you, Camille, who have been supporting Anthill from day one and journeying with us through the years, because they're really also invested in the impact that we create for our partner artisans.
Thank you so much, Anya. Yeah, I'm still using the pieces I bought 8 years ago. Okay, so this is such a discussion. I think Zvida, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there like guidance as how much percent of upcycle ingredients versus the virgin ingredients, then we can call it as a sustainable materials? Is there standard guidance?
That's such a good question, Svida. I'm not certain if there's a certain standard. Maybe Susanna would know, but I think a lot of brands that are very strong on sustainability practices upcycle waste fabrics, mostly dead stock. And there's a definition of like how can a certain raw material be dead stock? How many years has it not been used? But for us in Anthill, we mostly use end cuts, production end cuts. So these are really textile waste that are otherwise would be dumped. And we also work with hotels and use their discarded linens and towels. So these are primarily supposed to be waste that we're upcycling. So technically it's also dead stock. But in terms of the combination, I'm not quite certain if there's a particular standard. What do you think, Susanna?
Yeah, that's the problem. There are no, the term sustainable is not regulated, just like the term natural and beauty. And there are no, while there are things when it comes to fabrics like certifications, GOT certified, Tencel certified fabrics, you have, various different, BCI cotton, you have various different certifications that are out there which some brands are using. You have certain qualities of recycled fabrics like EcoNil and, companies like this, which have kind of better certified their whole supply chain process. But when it comes down to it, there is no such thing as the most sustainable fabric, and there never will be, because any fabric production, regardless if it's made in the most, indigenous, natural way, a sustainable way, whatever that is still extracting resources from the earth. So again, I think it's really important that the fashion industry moves towards better fabrics in terms of on a brand producer level. We're talking, to be honest, in my opinion, moving towards more natural biodegradable fabrics and improving the ways in which we can use synthetic fabrics, because they aren't going anywhere. Synthetics being polyester, nylon, acrylic. We're seeing more recycled versions. However, they're still not the perfect choice, because they still kind of leach microplastics. Essentially, for those who aren't aware, synthetic fabrics are made from crude oil. They're basically, you are wearing a form of plastic on your body. And this is a typical fabric that a lot of fast fashion brands use, because it can be acquired cheaply and produced with cheaply. As a consumer, when it comes down to it, it's really like the most sustainable fabric is the one that you're going to wear for a very, very long time. Doesn't matter what it is. I have pieces in my wardrobe from Zara. I haven't shopped there in many years, but I have pieces from when I was, a uni student 10 years back, showing my age, but that I still wear, because I'm not just going to throw it out, because I like the piece and I'm going to continue to wear it. I think that has to be, again, layers of nuance in this conversation. It has to be addressed. And the same thing when it comes to fabric choices for brands. I'll use the example of Dorsu again. Their fabric that they acquire from the local fabric markets in Phnom Penh, which is kind of discarded by big factories, is not a certified fabric. It's not it isn't a certified fabric. They burn test it to make sure that it is natural and naught to minimal synthetics. It's a simple cotton jersey and very high quality. But for them, that's doing the best that they can with what they have. They're not creating new virgin fabric. They're not extracting new resources of the brand. They're using what's already out there and producing with that, putting money back into the local Cambodian economy, and at the same time then keeping their carbon footprint as low as possible. They could get the most snazzy linen fabric from Europe that's certified by XYZ, but actually it's, do you know what I mean? Again, as a brand, you have to look at it from what can I do? Sometimes it comes down to what can I do with what's already out there, or what's the best supply chain to create where I am geographically even. That's not normal when it comes to design. Often as a designer, you think, I want to create this, and then I need this fabric, and I need this to source this, this, and this. What Dorsu did was the reverse. They said, what's already out there? What kind of brand then should we create? Do you know what I mean? So again, just a different way of thinking about it. But in sum, no such thing as a perfect fabric. And you kind of have to choose what's best for you in that situation and use it for a really long time.
Excellent point, Susanna.
Oops, is Camille frozen?
Looking at what you have, your resources, and creating something from there. Okay, so I am just doing a time. I don't want to forget our other topic, which is digital fashion. So for the rest of our discussion, we're going to jump into what is digital fashion, digital clothing. It's just so broad. So let's start with the basic. Maybe Zvida, you can start us off here. You're on mute.
That is a very broad question. What is digital fashion? Where should I start? I mean, we could say we are in the last 2 years in the pandemic stage. I don't know with other region. Well, I know for sure in Indonesia, we are not short of buying fashion because of digital platform, and that is this era was the era of disruptive fashion, suddenly springing new labels that we have not heard of, or labels that just new come out probably a year, 2 years before pandemic, and they're becoming really the strongest label. They grow 3 to 4 times. They use all the digital platform available to reach out the whole Indonesia. Well, Indonesia is consisting of 17,000 islands, 280 million people. So reaching out fashion community all around Indonesia is quite challenging. And because of that, then there is this, I'm talking about digital fashion on one side. Because of that, then there is this new phenomenon, which is called reseller. So because of digital platform, because of allowing for people in the rural, in the other area of Indonesia, reaching out fashion through digital platform, they become reseller of the fashion. They are becoming de facto of the person representing this label for that area. So some labels have like 100 resellers, some have thousands resellers, some even becoming stockist of the label owners. And this business was big during the pandemic. Another one that is because of the digital, because of this influence of fashion coming up and the term of open PO, open the purchase order. So there is this just tip, jasa titip, or a consign service. So someone from the village or someone from a city, tertiary or secondary cities around Indonesia, they would say like, hey, I'm going to Jakarta, do you want anything? And then they buy it and they get 10-20% commission. Because again, in the pandemic, not many people traveling. It was not like people flowing here and there. So this phenomenon was amazing. This phenomenon make like people queue in front of an empty shopping mall for a new collection just come out. And this is the disruptive era of pandemic. Fast forward, now a lot of these young labels have their own stores in Jakarta, in the region, even in Malaysia and Singapore. And they are growing, and they are really using all the digital platform for their means of marketing their fashion. Truly, truly impressive. And then another story. We just had the Jakarta Fashion Week, and we work collaboratively with Weir Group, who is doing metaverse fashion. So they are translating what is translating what is from the real into the fashion, into the metaverse fashion, and having that walk in the metaverse world. So Weir Group is creating Indonesia verse, Nusa Meta, and Jakarta Fashion Week is inside in a very surrealist fashion hall. And then we have the models, we have the collection without the models walk on the catwalk. So that what can we take from metaverse? If we take it metaverse from the intangibility, it's beautiful. I can try so many different clothes without having to pay it much. I mean, these days, like I heard there was like Louis Vuitton shoes that is $1,000, is 18 euros in the metaverse world. I forgot which platform. Yes, we can try. We can have so many different things without really having the guilt right of having their own goods. But secondly, I look at it as the process of preceding of the production. I think this is meta fashion is a wonderful way of creating collection, maybe actualized, people can see it and they like it, but then they can make sure whether that would fit or not by having their figures into as an avatar and trying it on their own with these collections. And that is, I think, a beautiful thing, so that it would minimize the mistake of buying collection. And secondly, it will be an efficient way of cutting pattern and making it to the right quantity, to the right persons. So yeah, I think the meta fashion we are right now in its infancy, but I'm very looking forward because there are many advantages for this meta fashion to go. Looking at it though, this digital world, and the first story about digital commerce is fantastic. It is tested. The second, the metaverse, is something that is still, I would say, it's still in a very beginning. We don't know. There is risk. There are strong brands that have already great brand equity. Should they be in? How they should be in? That's something that each brand it's a personal journey, how they want to be in, how they want to be involved, how they want to try it on. And there is the risk of, if it is not the right image, it may not be driving the right image to the brand. I remember there was a sponsor to us looking into metaverse, but then in the end they pulled back, and because they said, we don't know yet. We haven't seen the products. We don't know how we're going to make the customer journey with this metaverse world. So again, this is very early.
Absolutely, Vida. And I love that you honed in on the metaverse fashion, because it is an emerging trend, and even virtual reality, augmented reality, is a lot of big brands are jumping in on them, and mostly the high end brands. So I want to move now to, we have like, I'm going to say 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to give Susanna and Anya 2 minutes. Firstly, to Anya, what risks do you see specifically to meta fashion, metaverse fashion? And I loved, Vida, you mentioned about trying on something as an avatar in your digital self before purchasing. I think that's something that's conscious as well. And then also for Susanna, how can we cultivate positive conscious consumerism should there be a boom in this way of fashion in the metaverse?
To be very honest, just the thought or the concept of it, it's both exciting, but it's also scary. You know, I think I'm just coming from, I guess, the grassroots perspective. Coming through the pandemic, it was such a huge challenge for our artisans to transition selling online. Like, obviously, COVID was a huge threat to market access, and fortunately, we had our e-commerce platform up in 2019. But the artisans who are used to selling face to face and trade fairs and markets and bazaars really experience it as a huge threat. But they also express their desire to be able to weave tradition and technology. They don't want to get left behind. But joining platforms, let's say like Lazada and Shopee and Etsy, can be a bit saturated. And it's also very difficult for them to access. There's a lot of layers to it. It's not like we have very good infrastructure in the country or connectivity. And so I think the huge risk for this transition, or the possibility of a meta fashion and a meta universe, is, one, how can this be accessible to the artisans? It might benefit the consumers, but how will it also benefit the artisans? How can we leverage on technology for their advantage also, in terms of innovation, in terms of being able to weave, again, as I said, weave tradition and technology, use these tools in order for them to elevate what they already have. That, I think, will take a lot of education and setting up proper infrastructure, connectivity, use of digital tools, And that could be, one, overwhelming. Two, it could also be a deterrent to wanting to learn the craft. And I'm coming from the hat of how are we still able to keep the weaving tradition? You know, how can we keep the essence of, or the sanctity of the loom and still use technology, you know, doing things by hand and doing technology. So that could be a tricky part. There might be a lot of hesitation because it could be very intimidating, and it could entirely be an alienating world. So how could we also make it more inclusive? And how can we improve digital literacy among producers or artisans? So those are the questions in my mind as we transition to this very technological world.
Yeah, I love that, Anya. And also because we want to make sure we preserve that intangible cultural heritage, right? And not be lost in all the technology. I know it's almost the end, but I want to just say that thank you for everyone who's been active in the chat. We have Kian Nguyen from Vietnam, Jose Felisco, Dr. Syed Abdullah. I can't read the rest of the name. Fadzli Samsudin, thank you so much for joining us here. So we are nearing the end of our discussion, but I did want to circle back to our discussion about metaverse fashion and how we can be more conscious consumers given the rise of this. Susanna, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that, we've talked about two things here in this discussion. We've talked about digitizing supply chains and digital techniques and technology. And we've talked about actual digital fashion, which is, 3D fashion created for the metaverse with our potential future, avatars in mind. And you have a lot of digital fashion brands and labels. I posted a link, which is an explainer more specifically on that in the webinar chat, if anyone's interested to read about it. And there's lots of cool designers that are out there that are actually producing exclusively for avatars, for the metaverse, etc. You know what? I think that digitizing the fashion industry is crucial. It's important. It can bring a lot of benefits to the supply chains of brands, and I think that they can work in tandem to help improve transparency, improve communication between factories and brands. For example, there's a really great startup I know called KNO Global, which actually has created this is literally just an example of enhanced technology, but they've actually created a tool through which they can quantify and cultivate data on the ground about factories in order to report that to brands so they can understand how they can work better with their garment workers, because ultimately a better fashion industry means better work and equitable work for garment workers, and it means nurturing them, not just seeing them as centers of humanizing the supply chain versus seeing them as centers of productivity, units of productivity, which is, I think, when you talk about garment workers, there's this detachment, right? It's just someone who's making stuff. They're humans too, and they have needs, feelings on the ground in their workplace. So that's an example. KNO Global, I looked them up. It's really exciting. And the founder's like 25. She's insane. She's amazing. Marianne. I would also just say that, we're a long way off, I think, still until, digital fashion becomes more, as in 3D avatar, etc., becomes more everyday for consumers, just because a lot of us are still not in the metaverse or interacting or engaging with the metaverse on a day-to-day basis. But that's okay. It's an evolving space. I think that different businesses are going to have different levels of relevance for different things. I think right now within the fashion industry, the most exciting thing is the potential for technology to actually enhance your supply chain versus perhaps, presenting elements of your products in the metaverse. And again, I speak from more of a grassroots SME, smaller to medium independent brand level. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to speak about the consumer side when, not as many are actually engaged there yet. But of course, practically, wearing things in the metaverse means less textile waste, etc. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's going to evolve and as well, over time. So
thank you so much, Susanna. Excellent points that you raised there. We are at the 12 o'clock mark, and I just want to see if we can go this a little bit, like 2 minutes to close this session. I'm certain every person listening here is taking away positive insights and learnings from the breadth of this discussion. And as we mentioned earlier, we needed more time. I just want to thank, we are streaming live on Facebook at the Euraxis ASEAN page and at the Association for Young Environmental Journalists and Erasmus Mundus. So thank you everyone for tuning in and staying with us in this discussion. Also, the Ambassador of the EU and ASEAN, His Excellency Igor Dreismans, is following us on this discussion. Thank you so much for sharing with us in this discussion. So just 30 seconds from each of you. Let's give our audience, possible actions to take away with them. What is one thing that we can do to become more responsible influencers in the spaces we operate in? So let's start with Svida.
Well, okay, let me think. I think we're all responsible. We are living in a very limited resources, and for us to be sustainable, responsible fashion holder, creative maker, I think making an impact would be best if we work in collaboratively. I found this year, especially with Jakarta Fashion Week, I work a lot with many different parties, and that makes the whole journey more meaningful because we got bigger impact, we get bigger attention, and it's not that 1 + 1 = 2 in this fashion industry. It really makes it multiple to 2 or even power to 2. So in this era, I think it's good. Let's work collaboratively in the name of sustainable fashion.
Svida.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and just add something here. There's a famous phrase by Vivienne Westwood, which says, buy less, choose well, make it last. And I just think that's a really just summary of how you can engage with sustainable fashion right now. Whether you choose to buy less from your favorite fast fashion brand this year, choose better and make it last a long time, or whether you choose to support sustainable brands or artisanal businesses. So yeah, buy less, choose well, make it last. But on a brand level, I would adapt it to saying make less, source well, and produce to last. Because really, I think we're moving towards a future where the fashion industry is going to inevitably be greater, but also smaller. I think the future is, smaller operations and business models which make less impact, and the world needs less stuff. So that's not to say that businesses can't make profit, but I think it's something to think about as a brand. So buy less, choose well, make it last, and make less, source well, and produce to last. Yeah.
I love that, Susanna. Could you please
really
type it in the chat so we have it recorded?
I know, that was perfect,
Anya.
Susanna. Yeah, that was perfect. I learned so much from the two of you, Svida and Susanna. But for me, I think what really resonates with me right now is, knowing that what we consume is who we are. Like, what you wear is who you are, and what you consume is who you are. And I think for me, when we talk about sustainability and we talk about sustainable fashion, it all goes back to really having clarity of values and making sure that how you consume and how you live your life is very much anchored on the kind of values you have. And if you care for the future, if you care for future generations and you care about the planet, then that should be able to manifest in the way you live your life and the way you consume. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anya. I wish we had more time because there's much more to discuss. But thank you so much, everyone. Zvida, Anya, Susanna, for joining us in this discussion. Thank you to all of us who have been listening in Zoom and on Facebook. I'm going to hand this off to Jenny to close the event.
Thank you so much, Camille and Zvida, Susanna, Anya. That was an incredible discussion. And we really want this to be just a start. I mean, a community has been born here, to borrow Anya's words, and that is an important community that we have started. You know, fashion in the context of sustainability is still something that we don't quite understand yet, and all the more about digital fashion as well. But I remember this article from I think it was from the Harvard Review, where it says fashion is often said to both reflect and lead culture, and of course values as well. So we are hoping that this starts also breaking the silos. You know, the reason why Susanna and I have brought all of you incredible creators here is that we want to bridge the gap between fashion, which is also part of the value chain and part of industry, with research and innovation. So we hope that we can continue this discussion with you. We will let you know also about opportunities where we can collaborate, or you can collaborate, and we will definitely have these intersections, bringing together, you know, research, industry, also, you know, fashion, and all because we really have to work together. Now is the time to really work together. So thank you so much to everyone, for all of you here also joining us, whether inside the Zoom room or on Facebook. We will convert this incredible discussion into a podcast, as well as being available on YouTube, because we are getting now actually requests from fashion institutes and some designers, you know, to listen to this conversation. It's just that it's a Monday, so some of them are in client meetings, but they will listen soon. So thank you so much, and have a good afternoon, everybody. Have a nice start to your week.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.